on the road. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday Notary Titans call for Tuesday, June 4th, 2019. Carol Ray with Notary 2 Pro. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Laura Biewer from CoachMeLaura.com. Thank you for being here. And my name is Bill Soroka. I'm the founder of NotaryCoach.com. So, guys, we're so excited to do these Tuesday morning calls with you. Carol, what are you excited about this week?
You always ask me that. There's a lot of things that pop up like every day that I'm excited about. I'm excited. I think that we had more graduates over the weekend than we have ever had in a 2-day period. So now we've got all the little brand new notaries running around ready to go to work and make money.
Awesome. Awesome.
So that was exciting. And then Bill and I are going away. I mentioned it before, I think, on Friday to celebrate our 56th wedding anniversary.
Wow. Wow. Congratulations. That's huge.
So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
It is.
Mm-hmm. Big deal,
Laura.
The
first few years that go past 6 months. You know?
Laura, welcome. You're with CoachMeLaura.com. What are you excited about this week?
Oh my gosh. Some weeks you just have a lot more going on than others.
Yeah.
So I am in the middle of purchasing a house. Ooh. So I am on the other side of the table. I'm helping my son get his first home here in Modesto. And so we're 50-50 on the house and the note and all of that. So from choosing the lender and the title and the going through the disclosure process, doing all of that electronically, just watching each step from the other side of the table is very educational to be the buyer side of things and finding out what, oh my God, they're bombarded with disclosures. And since there's 3 of us, there's 3 sets of everything. And we're trying to manage it. But sometimes I'll look at an email and think, well, didn't I already sign that? You start to get confused. So I really have a renewed appreciation for borrowers and buyers this week. And we will close, hopefully, June 25th. We're using Chicago Title locally. And one of the things I requested was I want my own notary. I don't want to go through. I have plenty of colleagues. Why not give them the job directly? And of course, the first thing you hear is, well, you have to be on their list. I said, you know what? The law says I'm entitled to pick my own notary.
Ooh.
If they're not on your list, you know what I can do? I can do it outside of escrow and just pay them direct. So in any case, it's interesting that buyers or consumers are not aware of what their rights are when they're purchasing a home. So I'm all into that.
I love that you brought that up because I think there's a huge opportunity for educating consumers for this exact purpose, that they do have the right to do it. Real estate agents can even make the recommendation.
That's right.
We're not subject to their rules and requirements. So I love that. So we'll have to dive deeper into that, I think, later. Anything else that you're excited about?
Well, it's not this week, but coming up, I just want to announce that there'll be another skill builder. This one's on powers of attorney documents, which are the most common documents requested if you do general, mobile notary work in lots of different environments, but they come down to about the same 4 types of powers of attorney. And I will be doing that at 9 a.m. on Saturday, June 22nd live. So please, if you're able to squeeze an hour there, you will learn a lot about those documents.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll send out the link to sign up for that later on today as well. Yeah, totally free. Totally free. I love those little skill builders. So thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Can I throw something in there?
Throw anything you want.
My experience as an escrow officer and an escrow manager all those years. One of my favorite things to do was I captured brand new buyers. I mean, literally, they come into my office and I always spent a good deal of time with them because they're terrified and there's so much going on and it's worse now than it ever was. But what was one of my greatest joys was to spend time with a new home buyer, especially these young couples that were just, for the first time buying a home, and they were scared and didn't know if they were doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a joy to be able to do that. And I find that there's a correlation between that and some of the people that we sign documents for. And I just want to remind people how important it is that when you have people, and you can tell that they're nervous and they're a little bit, wary of the process, to spend that extra time with them. You may not get paid extra, but just to help, it'll make a lifetime of difference for those people.
Yeah, it really does. And it's really cool too I love doing first time home buyers because they are so excited. They still have the awe about the experience. So they're still excited. You get some of these people where it's just old hat and they're like, you can save the jokes for the next people. They're just not enjoying the moment like a new home buyer is. So. Or
they look at their settlement statement, they go, "Oh, right." Oh.
Exactly. All right. Well, I'm going to share a little bit about what I'm excited about too. I just got the keys to my new place yesterday, so I'm going to be moving again for the second time in 2 months or 3 months, whatever it's been. Way too soon to move again, but I'm so excited about the new place to get me through the summer here in Phoenix. And on Thursdays we do a building authentic relationships call, special training call. And this week we have Catherine McGraw-Patterson. I'm real excited about it. I'm going to really be working with her to bring some value out to everybody. She's really skilled in networking for the networking adverse. She's big into authenticity and bringing your authentic self into networking situations, but also finding networking situations that allow you to be your authentic self. And I think that kind of reverses the thinking that a lot of us have about networking. And the book was fantastic. I'm excited to have her as a guest this week. All right, let's move on then to...
Are you moving into an igloo? I've lived in Phoenix. I don't know how you're going to keep cool.
I've lived here my entire life, and I am still not adapted to the heat. I'm 43 years old. I'm like, when does it happen? I'm already, it's 97 degrees. We had a great May, but now I'm like ready to go. So I do have a pool in the new place. So I think I'll just be, the next week's call might be from a swimming pool. So so today's call, we have some amazing questions. Carol, Laura, the people that sent questions are really interesting. We've got some different topics this time, so I'm excited to bring those. And then Laura is doing a brief presentation on witnessing and the different acts that are involved with that for a notary. Laura, are you feeling like you'd like to go first? You want to dive into some questions first?
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to go either way. Would you like to flip it around and I'll start and then we go into questions?
How about this? We actually have our first question about witnessing.
Oh, perfect.
Does that work out?
I think that just works out.
The timing was really good on this one. Let me make sure I have it in the right order here. No guarantees. Nope. Oh, come on. Seriously? Okay, Laura, why don't you take it away for witness?
I'll take it away anyways. As a notary coach, when I happen to do my 101 or notarology class, which is really for brand new notaries, also as a hotline representative, and some of you have spoken to me on the hotline. It's so funny because I'll be talking and pretty soon they'll say, "Is this the Laura from the Tuesday mornings?" Like, yes, that's
me. Recognize your voice?
I guess it's my voice. They're like, "Your voice sounds so familiar." I just couldn't quite place it. But then once they connect it, it's fabulous. So for those of you who have called into the hotline and spoken to me, it was a pleasure. But I get a lot of calls on the hotline across all 50 states regarding notarial wording that does not look like acknowledgement or jurat wording. And it turns out to be witnessing wording. The other question I get a lot is credible witness. And sometimes they need an actual statement and notarization, but in many states they don't. And then the other one is document witnesses. So we've got all these different kinds of witnesses going on, and it can be very confusing. So I thought it would be helpful to just identify each one of these three and clarify their role and when you might see them. So I'm going to start with the Witnessing Act. Now, there are maybe a dozen states or so that have that as a notarial act. That means there's a lot of us, including my own state, California, that does not have that notarial act. However, I deal with out-of-state documents frequently. And what I will receive is a document that basically says they signed in front of me. They affirmed their signature. I witnessed their signature. Those typically are clues. And you will not see the word acknowledgement anywhere in it. And so many notaries go to the easy, of which it is easy to say, hey, if it has an oath, it's a jurat. If it doesn't, it's acknowledgement. But there's this other notarial act out there that may not be in your state, and you may not realize that that witnessing act cannot be replaced with an acknowledgement. It requires you to witness the signature, and that's what the receiving agency needs. Even though you may have witnessed it in an acknowledgement, the wording does not certify you witnessed it in an acknowledgement. So there's a real big difference there. You will identify the signer and you will witness their signature. Those are the two big things that need to happen. So when you get this and you don't have this notarial act in your state, you need to let them know that's not one in your state, number one. Number two is you need to let them know what the certification is requiring of the notary. And then number three, you can offer up what you can do in your state. So for instance, in the jurat, typically you're watching them sign, and that's the certification. Now you're also giving an oath, which isn't necessary, not needed in their case, but you're getting the witnessing part. It doesn't mean that just because I know that I can say, well, this is the one we're going to replace it with. You always need to discuss it with your signer and share with your signer with what each of those acts do and don't do, and then let them decide or let them call the receiving agency to see what the right replacement is that would be acceptable. So I see it particularly in southern and eastern states like Georgia. When I handle loan signings for Georgia, it is extremely important that I witness their signature. Early on, I handled a deed for Georgia and I used the acknowledgement, and it was kicked back and said, that's not good enough. And I said, but I did watch. And they said, yes, but your wording doesn't say that. And I ended up having to do an affidavit separately to that document to add to it that said, I did watch them sign. So be very careful with that, real estate recordable documents particularly. So that's really the difference. If you don't know if you have that in your own state, so first thing I recommend is go look it up. Go to your handbook and verify if that's a notarial act for you. And if it is, look at your form examples, certificate examples, so you would recognize it. If you don't have it in your state, then it's just your information so that if it comes across in an out-of-state document, you're more comfortable with what's in front of you. So that's the notarial act called a witnessing act. Then, of course, we have notarial witnesses called credible identifying witnesses. Again, most states have one or two, and there are specific rules. There are a few states where it's not identified at all and they don't have that option. But if you are in a state where that is an option, it involves having them show up at the same time and giving an oath or an affirmation to the identity of the signer. So they're vouching for that signer. And that is ancillary to whatever the primary notarial act is for most states. You just need to document it in your journal, and it doesn't go on the document. However, Florida, for instance, Colorado, for instance, and I think Pennsylvania, for instance, and there's a fourth one I can't think of, they have an extra step where they have a credible witness affidavit that actually has to be signed and notarized, and if you're maintaining a journal, record it. So there's actually a secondary notarial act in those particular states. Again, if you don't know the rules for your specific state, highly recommend that you go look at your handbook and find out, can I use credible witnesses? Is it limited to one? Remember, one typically is you have to know that person besides them knowing the signer. Much more difficult to accomplish. And of course, unless you're in California, 49 states get to use personal knowledge. We don't. So we're always going to end up using some form of ID. So that's the credible witness. Again, be familiar with that and what your process is. And if it were me, I would photocopy that section out of your handbook and tape it on the inside of your journal, along with the recommended oath or affirmation, so that you have it available should it come up for you. It comes up for me frequently in general work. It doesn't happen as often in loan signing work, but it has. I just tell the title company I'm doing it this way. It meets the laws of my state, and they almost always say, yes, that's fine. So it can happen in either arena. And then you're going to get documents that not only need to be notarized, they need to be witnessed, or at least they look like they do. So let's just talk about those document witnesses for a moment. Document witnesses are not notarial witnesses. They belong to the document. It's the signer's responsibility to provide them if they're necessary. And they're going to print and sign their name to the document while they're watching, the signer sign. So it is not acceptable to notarize and have the signer say, oh, I'll get witnesses later, because they've already signed. It could be okay for them to sign and have it witnessed if the notarial act happens to be an acknowledgement, because you don't have to watch. You could just ask. In any case, that's what that's about. For whatever reason, the receiving agency of that form is wanting witnesses. However, when you see just witnesses and no notarial act, then that's all they need. They don't need you. However, sometimes I see witnesses and a notarial act. That may be an and statement, or it may be an or statement. It may be, for instance, in the Advanced Healthcare Directive, it's an or statement. 2 witnesses or 1 notary. We don't need both. Mm-hmm. And so I always talk with my signers when I know it's that kind of document to say, okay, did you know you can have 2 witnesses instead of me? Or did you want me instead? You don't need both. If you use me, don't worry about getting any witnesses. They're not needed. If it's an and statement, meaning it's going to be witnessed and notarized, then that's when everybody has to be in the room at the same time to make sure that it's happening correctly. Again, signer's job to provide witnesses, unless they can't, and they ask you, can you provide the witness? I can, but I pay for that witness, and they get paid for that witnessing service. When it comes to the notary, if the document is an and statement, and they're saying, well, can't you be the notary and the witness? In some states, that's acceptable. Florida, that's acceptable, as long as you're not part of the document. But in the recommendation, the best practice is don't be the witness and the notary in the same document. Have other people. The more, the better. More people that can testify that says, yes, that was the person who signed the document. So I don't recommend you being both, but when it comes to the law, many states don't prohibit it. As long as you're not. Now, there are some states, there's 3 or 4 that absolutely prohibit it. You just can't do it. So for you, if you're in that state, be aware of that. So what does that mean for you? It means you need to check your law to see, does it prohibit you from being both? If you want to know what the 2 or 3 states are, there's only 6 states that are quote unquote witnessing states. And it's those 6 where some I can and some I cannot. So if you want to know what the 3 are, I'll give it to Bill, and he can post it in the email that goes out after, so that you can know the 3 states that are absolutely you can never. Okay? Now, if you have questions about any one of those kinds of witnesses I talked about, I'm happy to address them.
Yeah, I think there's a couple in here. Diana just sent one over. Laura, how much do you pay the witnesses that you obtain?
It depends on how far they have to drive. So if the longer it goes, the longer they have to be on the road to get to the place to spend the 10 minutes with me, then the more I'm going to pay. I usually pay them about $25. And that just goes to them. I don't take any of their money.
Right.
And usually they're just friends of mine. Sometimes they're notary colleagues. But if I say I'm going to do it, that's how I find somebody. And the law in California does not document witnesses at all because it's not a notarial act, so it's not regulated.
Right. And for
Can you
me,
talk about, oh, I'm sorry.
for me in Arizona, I charge $50. I know it's on the high end,
Mhm.
but if I'm going to handle the logistics, I'm going to pull somebody out of whatever they're doing and bring them, I charge a flat $50, and that goes to the witness as well. What that does is that either inspires the signer to find their own witness, or they just say, yeah, that's okay. That's worth the convenience.
Sure.
Laura, can you talk about subscribing witnesses? Causes a lot of confusion.
Sure. I purposely kind of left that out because it's so confusing for people, but let's talk about it separately. So in many states, a workaround to the acknowledgement is called a proof of execution, which means somebody other than the notary will prove that the signer signed the document, and we call them a subscribing witness. Think of subscribing as substitute. They're a substitute signer. And so you're going to have them in front of you instead of the real signer. And they're going to come to you with their story that says, here's the document my signer signed, and they asked me to come to you and get it notarized. And there are a few rules involved. And I'm going to give you examples for California. However, it doesn't mean these are your specific rules in your specific state. In California, the subscribing witness will sign their name to the document as a witness to the signature. They will swear or affirm to the notary that the signer indeed did sign the document, and they know them to be that person. All right, so they have to have personal knowledge with that signer. And they have face-to-face contact themselves. Then I have face-to-face contact with the substitute signer. And the notarial act is proof of execution by subscribing witness. That's what goes in my journal. And whatever notarial act, which is going to be the acknowledgement that's on their document, I'm not going to use. I'm going to write "see attached," and I'm going to replace that. And in my state, a subscribing witness may not be identified based on identification. They have to be identified based on a credible witness. And I have to know the credible witness. So you can see how difficult it is to even make that happen. So Carol, does that?
Thank you. I just know that's very confusing, and I have a hard time trying to explain it, and it rarely comes up. So,
So the first clue is you don't have a real signer in front of you. You've got somebody else holding a signer's document. If that's the scenario, call the hotline, because you may have the scenario. But if you have the signer in front of you, that's never going to be the scenario.
It's a good rule of thumb. Beth is asking, is that the same thing as a self-proving affidavit?
No, a self-proving affidavit is a document that typically goes with a will, and it is signed typically by the witnesses and the will maker that says everybody was in the room together and they all watched each other sign the document. So that self-proving affidavit is a document where a subscribing witness is a person who's part of a notarial act.
Beautiful. Any more questions on witnessing? Laura, real quick, if you were going to chart a path of homework, like a starting point, if somebody was really interested in gaining expert status, very similar to you, where would you point them?
Within their own state?
Yeah, in each individual state.
So there are several resources that I would recommend. Of course, I would go first to see, is there a handbook? And almost every state has some form of handbook or notary guide from their administering office, which could be the Secretary of State, the governor's office, depends on who's managing notaries. In addition, the NNA has law primers. They look like this. For I think most of the states, there are a few that there isn't one, and mostly because there's not much information on them. There's set up per state. So it's very specific, and it's a handy book to have in your bag so that it not only covers your state law, but it also covers some of the things that your state law doesn't cover, and it gives you recommended practices. Another document or publication would be a, okay, it's such a long name, I can hardly remember it. The, I want to say best practices. Let me look it up, and I will tell you the third one. There are two other documents that are published out there that are recognized as best practice for notaries. And it's, a lot of it is Rulona, if you're familiar with that, with those regulations. And they are recognized, these documents, in all 50 states. And what they do is they give you some general things that if your law doesn't state what to do, and this document does give a best practice, then that's probably going to be recognized in court. So if you did something and you were in court and you said, well, I did it because I read in this document that this would be the best way to handle it, they're going to accept that. And that's why it's important to be knowledgeable about that. And I promise to give that to you, Bill, along with the states that are witnessing states.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you. You know, I think this conversation about the importance of gaining, at least charting the course for expert status in your state is going to be very important. There is nobody that's going to step in and be that for you in your particular state. This is a huge responsibility for notaries, and I encourage you to, you know, Laura started in the beginning too and wasn't an expert and studied and gained experience and got there. Same thing with Carol. You know, y'all figure it out, but we have to set that bar to reach that expert level. All of us are responsible for doing that. That helps the entire industry as well.
And Bill, I just want to add that if you are a member of the NNA or you bought a package from them and you have hotline service, use it. I had a really difficult question yesterday about something that is not a regular notarial act, and it's about witnessing the destruction of safe deposit boxes. And there was some very specific conditions that had to be met in order for this notary to do the job. And you know what? You're just not going to find that in your handbook. That's when you need experts who know how to go look at the law and find it, because some of the law is buried and you just don't see it in the handbook. So use that hotline resource. And then of course you've got Bill, Carol, myself. There's other people out there more knowledgeable who can also answer questions as things come up. Then you'll know for the next time.
Absolutely.
I have to remove myself from that list.
Well, for NSA, Carol.
I can't. Oh, yes, but not as far as the states. It's one of the things that I absolutely, enforce in my students, that you've got to know the rules and regulations of your own state. I can't teach, nationwide and know that. So that's really important. And I got a couple of questions on my exam that point that out. The answer is simple. Look at the regulations of your own state. Don't try to answer this, in other words. And most people miss it because they don't realize how things vary from state to state. They're so different.
Absolutely. All right. Awesome. Is there let's see.
I see a question from Mark about in California, if the document asks for witnesses, meaning there's a place for witness signatures, but the signer doesn't have them, can you still notarize? There are lots of cases where it's or, not and, but we don't know that as notaries, and the signer probably doesn't know that, so the signer would need to find out, is it okay to skip the witnesses? If the answer is yes, we don't need the witnesses if you've got a notary, my recommendation is that they have the signer put N/A or none or something in the witness area so they don't try to go get witnesses later.
And there are some states you absolutely have to check. I think Florida, for one, they can't record the documents without the witnesses. So
right. So you need to find out.
Yeah, you have to look it up.
And then when it comes to loan signings too, a lot of these document packages are just boilerplate templates. So you'll be in a state that does not require witnesses, but still have lines for witnesses, and that can throw you through a loop too. All right. Judith has a question too, though. For the subscribing witness, does the credible witness need to know the subscribing witness as well?
Well, absolutely. In my state, that's the only way it's going to happen, which is why it never happens.
Right.
because people call me, the public calls me for the service and says, hey, my friend needs a document notarized. Can I bring it in and get it notarized? And I say, okay, but you have to bring a friend of yours when you come to identify you. And they say, okay. And then I say, but make sure your friend is a friend of mine. And they're like, oh, okay. I said, so I can't help you. Now, I think many states are similar to that requirement. I would have to look up every single state to tell you how yours is. But if you want to know your specific state, you reach out to me, via email, I'll respond to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Laura. All right. So let's jump into some of these questions because we got some good ones this time. Well, we have good ones every time, but some of these were interesting. All right. I have a question for you or Laura regarding general notary work. When performing a notarization for a POA, shouldn't your journal entry under the document type include the name of the person who is giving the authority? I have a workbook from the NNA where this info isn't included in the specimen example. It seems to me that if there were ever a court challenge, the notary should be able to look at his or her journal and say who the authority was given from. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but it just seems like pretty important information to me.
Okay, Judy. So one, the person's signature being notarized is the principal who's giving the power. So that's whose name is going to be in my journal and who's signing it. The appointee, which would be the person, the agent, the healthcare proxy, the attorney in fact, I'm not notarizing their signature. And so in my additional information or notes column, that's where I write AIF is so-and-so, so that I have it in my journal. And when you use the word should, that tells me that we're talking not about the law, we're talking about what helps a notary. And I agree, in my journal, which is my BFF, I use that additional information and notes column for these kinds of things so I can look back and know exactly who was with me and what happened.
Excellent. Great suggestion. Great question. From Suzette, I saw a video on YouTube from someone in California. I live in the Sacramento area, and she said she stopped doing loan signings here because the pay was so low. Her video was posted about 3 years ago, I believe. Do you have any experience on what California pays for a loan signing? Well, I think Carol and Laura can both speak to this. You're right there. Carol, you're right there, not too far, right?
Yeah.
Well, either one of you.
Right in that little area there.
Yeah.
It depends on so many factors. And of course, I'm going to say it depends on the certification that you have, how well you've been trained, if people respect the certification. I can only speak for my graduates. I have graduates who, even though they've been really well trained and they know what they're doing, they spend no time marketing themselves. They'll take what's easy. They'll be happy to take a $50 signing from SnapDocs. Doesn't happen often, but it's just the mentality of people. We watch the difference between our graduates. If people really put themselves into marketing themselves and holding a certain standard for themselves as far as the fees that they require to do the jobs, we watch them succeed and make a lot of money, and they're doing really, really well. And then there's other people who they just don't get it, how it impacts them when they don't do their marketing and they don't extend themselves and require more. So I'm going to say, there's people that are not making hardly any money in this area, but there's others that are just really making me very, very proud.
Yeah. I love it. And I think we have some mutual students up in that area that are doing really, really well. Yeah. Laura, what about you? What's your experience?
So I think that what Carol shared is true across the United States. It's all about how you market, what you accept, where you set your own boundaries. But in California specifically, and I've been doing this for almost 16 years, and I started out doing loan signings specifically, I will tell you it's very geographic. So what they might pay in San Francisco is going to be different than what you might get in Modesto, California, which is Central Valley. However, even that being said, I see a range just in what's being offered anywhere from about, on average, just taking out lowball stuff, probably 85 to 125. Anywhere in that range I see all the time. And how they determine that and what you accept is up to you. Can there be stuff less than 85? Absolutely. And can people get jobs that are paid more? Absolutely. On either side of that range. I know that I changed my model, and I mostly do general work now, but I just did a loan signing last night. I probably still handle about 10 loan signings a month, one to keep my finger in it. And I do not, the offers coming my way are not low. I think they're very appropriate.
Excellent.
I think the people that are watching TNT every week have a huge advantage because they care and they're trying to be the best that they can and gobble up all the knowledge that they can from people who know a little bit more. So all of you out there, you just keep plugging away and take what you feel you're worth, and you're going to be just fine.
Yeah. And, this applies not only to this industry, but just business in general. Anytime you're starting a business or some sort of endeavor, you can see, I actually have a story for this one, Carol. I know, beat you to it. And I want to share it because it really does apply. And you really have to be discerning when you hear other people talk about their experience in the business, especially the ones that complain, because there are a lot of negative Nancys or complainers. They come in, they don't follow the exact plan, or it gets too hard, or they just don't want to do it. Mm-hmm. And then those are the most vocal. The people who are killing it in the business are usually not the ones who are online talking about how great business is. It's usually only the naysayers. So you have to be aware of that. But there's this, I went to an event in Santa Clara, California last year, and I had an Uber ride, 2 different Uber rides. The first one was a Prius. And the guy came in, he was super friendly. We're talking. He lived in San Diego. He would fly up every Monday where he had his Prius parked, where he paid for rent. He paid for a room. He worked because the business was so good in Santa Clara that he would just leave his family for the week and then fly back on Friday night or Saturday morning. That's how good business was in Santa Clara. Immediately after that, I dropped off for lunch, got another Uber, and it was a guy in a Prius. And the first thing that he said when we walked in, I was with a buddy of mine that kind of looks like me. He said, "Oh, it's like I have twins, but you're the fat one." So I was like, "What? Excuse me? Well, I got to be the fat one." So the conversation, naturally, I had to probe a little bit into this, and he complained the whole time about how terrible business is. He lived there. Business is awful. It's just terrible. I'm going to have to go out and get another job. We got one guy flying up to his city because business is so good, but he's having a different experience because of his attitude and his, I would imagine, his work ethic and definitely his conversation skills. But there is all these different perspectives on things. So we have a lot of control over our experience, and we can't trust that everybody is putting in the same amount of efforts that you are. So they are going to get different results.
Well, my challenge, the biggest challenge of my life, was when I started Notary to Pro back in 2009, 10 years ago. And my family will tell you, I wanted to quit so many times because my life for 2 years was calling every company I had worked for, calling title companies, sending out stuff, working for 2 years, trying to market, because this was new. Nobody else was doing this. And just banging my head on the wall. And there was so many times when I said, I can't do this anymore. I wasn't making any money. I wasn't making really any strides. I think I had 10 graduates my first 2 years, which was amazing. And the kids said, you tell us all the time, never quit, keep it up. Bill's always been a tremendous support to me. And, and I look now, and yeah, it took me 10 years, but I think we've accomplished something really good, and with a lot of people. It's just, you just got to keep at it. If you believe in it, you believe in yourself, don't take what's easy, keep doing what's hard. It's grueling to call all these companies. It is grueling. And I do understand that and why people give up, but you've got to just keep on doing it. It will pay off.
It will. And it's amazing how one person can change everything. And that's why, we all talk about how important it is to show up to every signing and be 100% present. Show up and treat every signing like it's, your first one of the day. You're fresh and you're ready to go, because you don't know who you're going to meet. I have so many stories about escrow managers I've met that led into $100,000 a year clients just because I showed up, I did what I did, and I showed that I love what I did. That type of relationship, it can change like that if you keep at it. All right, great question, Suzette. Thank you for sparking that conversation. Let's see. For non-experienced loan signing agents, me applying with agencies, what is the best way to answer questions that have to do with experience and training? Carol, do you mind taking that one?
Yeah, let me observe. You know what I was doing? I was looking at Carolyn. She's just adorable. I'm seeing you're just as cute as a bug, cute bug. Okay, now let's see. In applying with agencies, what's the experience and training? It's the obvious. I mean, you want to talk about, who trained you for one thing, and take advantage if they're well known. If you've trained people, Laura's trained people. Hopefully, they're well known in the business. I'm well known in the business. Mm-hmm. You just need to, more than talking about it, demonstrate it. Hope that they give you a chance to show what you're made out of. And I don't know what else to say, because it's an individual thing. But I think it's so important that when we do get that chance, that we give it everything we have, do the best that we can, demonstrate all of our skills. Communication is key. I believe in communication between everyone, on the ladder. If you keep everybody informed as to what's going on, I think that it's a kind of a relief that they know, that you're going to change the appointment. Is that okay? I don't know what else to say. It's just, you're always the one that says, you can't walk in and just start telling people how wonderful you are. I think if you get a chance to demonstrate, you're better off.
Yeah, what I tell people is that you are the only one that knows your experience level. So right now, when you're first starting out, you just assume that everybody's like, oh, why would we hire you? You don't have any experience. But that's not necessarily how this goes. Signing companies, number one, are the only ones that really ask about experience. There's some mainstream title companies that do, but for the most part, it's signing companies. They're trying to do an initial screening. But what I encourage you to do is summon all of your experience. Everything that you've done before being a mobile notary and loan signing agent is going to help you be a better mobile notary and loan signing agent. So go back and paint the picture. Consider it almost like a resume. I'm not a huge fan of submitting resumes unless it really works, but you want to really paint a picture that just shows that you're the best person for the job. And if you look at the pain point for signing companies and escrow officers, what they need and what they want is somebody who's going to represent them professionally and well at the closing table. If you truly believe that's you, then paint that picture and kick the door down and let them know that you're the person. That's how you're going to get the chance to perform, and then perform well when you do that. The other thing is, I have never, ever been asked by an escrow officer what my experience level is, because I don't approach it like timid, like, oh, please, sir, can I have a signing? It's my first one. You're not going to do that. You want to walk in with some confidence about what it is that you're there to do. When I first started this business, I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew I had to do it, and I liked it. I got my first taste of a signing. I'm like, holy cow, $150 an hour, and I don't even have a degree. I'm all about it. So I just told people I'm a mobile notary and loan signing agent. And they're like, great, come on in, let's talk. It was just a different, and it's a different way of approaching it. You're not begging for business. You're presenting a service. You're assisting them. And when you find the right clients, that's really how they approach it. An escrow officer that really values you and your skill set and your time, that's how they're going to treat you. It's a great relationship. Laura, how about you?
The two things that I think are really important, Bill, you hit on one, which is, there was a life before you were an NSA, many skills and experiences that can relate to it. I think that speaking the language is a way to demonstrate your training, your knowledge. So when they're talking about anything that's specific to this industry or loan signings, you need to understand what they're talking about and be able to mirror that and talk back to them in their own language. So they get that sense of comfort that says, oh, this person, whether or not you've done any signings, knows what you're doing. I think the other thing is, you need to keep integrity, which means don't lie. Because if you lie about your experience, and then they say, okay, let's give you a job, and it's something you can't handle, they've caught you. So stick with your integrity. And if you're directly asked, no, I haven't done one. Here's what I've been doing to be prepared for it. And this is where you can highlight the experience and the training and obviously your knowledge. And finally, general communication skills. One of the things that I have noticed is that just general communication skills, whether it's verbal or in writing, meaning I spell things right, I use good grammar, I use buffer words front and back end, and I speak in a way that presents myself in the best light, that I have education. And I think that's really important. And there are people out there who might get the training, but they don't really know how to present themselves. And they might need a little charm school to help, pull that together.
I think one of the things that you said, Laura, that's so important, and I really stress this because I get this question all the time. A lot of my students are seasoned notaries, but a lot of them are brand new people. Mm-hmm. Don't ever try to fudge or say you've done more signings than what you have. You're going to get caught every time, and you'll never get hired again by those people. So it's really important. And you both said it better than I did, but it's true. You need to be honest, but let them know the skills that you've acquired and what you've learned, and talk the language.
Yeah, there is, if you really look at what this business is based on, which is authentic relationships, like being in a true relationship. If you start a relationship based on a lie, it's really a shaky foundation, and it usually doesn't go well. They're eventually going to find out. You're going to say something later on that says, oh, wait, but you told me this, 6 weeks ago. It's just not worth it. There are ways to present yourself to where you're still going to look good. They're going to trust you, and you're going to get to prove yourself. Now, Laura, you brought up Charm School, and I'm so glad that you did, because that really ties into authentic relationships, right? If we're going to be interacting with other human beings, there are things you want to know and understand how you're showing up to other human beings and how they're reacting to you. So are you aware of what that is? Are you processing? Are you striving to be, I hate using the word better, but are you, there's different skills. There's this theory that we're all just born with everything that we need to function in this world, and it's just not true. So there are skills that we need to hone and develop, and it's okay to do that. We just have to have that on our radar, so we are doing it. Emotional intelligence really ties into that. How do we process our own feelings and emotions, and how do we throw that on to other people? And a lot of the downside to being in a relationship business is that other people are sensitive too, and they may not be growing along with you. So you have to be aware of what's going on, not only with yourself, but with other people and how you're interacting. Do we have a question on that? Okay, great. I can't hear. It sounds like somebody's coming in. Okay, so when re-editing your website, should you add a photo, or is that a safety issue? Any thoughts on this?
I'm happy to jump in.
Yeah.
I have one. I'm on my 4th or 5th reiteration of my website over the 16 years. And I've always had photos of myself. And I will tell you, I don't feel it's a safety issue. I take other precautions, of course, to maintain my safety. But I will tell you, I've had specific feedback over and over, whether it's on Yelp or my website or other places where you'll find me. And I say, what made you choose me if you saw more than one notary? And they say it's my photo, that I looked approachable, that they knew that they could probably work with me. And of course, that means I didn't have one of those selfies. It's a professional headshot. And it was one that I was trying to exude a certain type of personality or persona, which is one of being friendly and helpful and approachable. And it has made a difference for me in getting jobs over other notaries just because I did that.
Also, having come from a background where security, I worked for the gambling industry when I was in Illinois, and having a face so you know who's showing up is that extra security feature that a lot of people want and need.
Right, for the customer side.
Right.
Yeah, great thinking. Yeah, I think you could probably find an argument for either one on this. Do faces work? Absolutely. I think that's proven every day in advertising. You know, look at real estate agents. Their face is on their card almost every time. It's on buses, lawyers, attorneys. It's everywhere. So there is an advantage to it, I think, a very clear advantage. And there might be some risk, too, because it might help you become a target. So, but Laura, as we've talked about in previous ones, you have to take additional precautions to keep
Absolutely.
Hey, Barra Williams, I noticed that your hand's up. Do you have a question?
No. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
Oh, hi. Yes. Good morning, everybody. No, sir, that was an accident.
Oh, no problem.
But enjoying everything that I'm learning. Thank you so much.
You got it. I'm going to lower your hand and you're good to go. Thank you. Okay. When your budget is limited, how should you choose your community marketing besides volunteering? So if you're on a shoestring budget, how can you advertise? And this one I think is specifically for general notary work. So Laura, if you don't mind, can you give us some guerrilla strategies?
My strategy started with what's free, low-hanging fruit, wherever I could get that visibility. So that's where I start, whether it's on the internet or even just with the people I do business with already, where I bank, where I do my manicure, where I get my hair cut, where I take my dogs to be groomed, where I buy the dog food. I mean, wherever I go, I'm about loyalty to the places that I shop. And so they know me. And so that is where, again, that's a freebie. That's relationship building. And so they know who I am, that I'm a notary. And that has presented me work. When I start paying for it, or I should say a few more things that were free. For instance, the Yelp profile is free. Some people said it didn't help them. For me, I get a lot of business from the free profile. Don't have to pay for the advertising, and it's great. Then, of course, when I went to paid, I invested money in my website. And you may not have enough to have a custom designed build one, but there are other opportunities out there to get a less expensive one. That will get you on the screen. Because if you're not even on the radar, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that I did is I wrote articles to the NNA. I wrote articles to the newspaper. I speak at churches and other houses of worship about notarization in general and what it is. I'm educating the public about the world of notaries and what we do for them. I expanded that and I spoke at a nonprofit organizations like Kiwanis and Seroptimist, and those are all business people. And of course, I'm not talking about my specific company. I'm, again, talking about the world of notaries and helping educate the public. But of course, they get my business card when I leave. And so that's another way. And that didn't cost me anything. And actually, they buy me lunch. So that's pretty cool. So I'm really big into how can I, whether it's one-on-one or one-to-group, live meeting people. I've had a booth at a health fair for advanced healthcare directives for a senior health fair. I've done that. So, and that since I was giving away actually the notarization, they didn't charge me for the booth. So I was there trying to help their population. But you could charge a discount. That was just something that I did. So these are all things that really take your time rather than your money to do that.
Also, when you do stuff like that, if it's for a not-for-profit, get a letter from them and it's a tax write-off.
Right. And I volunteer for hospice in my county. However, and that's for their clients. However, when their clients later need me again, after that person passes, that's paid work. And hospice themselves, the corporation, when they use my service, they pay. So even though I'm volunteering some of my services, I'm getting paid from other sources related to them.
Excellent. And then from the digital perspective, I already see some people chatting that up in the comments as well. But Google actually has a pretty robust free suite of services. It's called Google My Business. And if you haven't tapped into that, if you're intimidated by technology or search engine optimization, I still encourage you to check it out. It's kind of fill in the blank. They just kind of walk you through it. But if you're not taking advantage of that on the general notary work side, you are really missing out, because that's That's where customers are going to find a notary, and you want to be on the top of that list. And it's all free.
Yeah.
Great questions.
And
yep.
nextdoor.com.
Yeah, nextdoor.com is a favorite as well. Yeah, that really works out.
Because it's your own neighbors. And that's a great jumping off point for people you wouldn't otherwise meet.
Yep, absolutely.
And another way my neighbors and other people find me is I have those inexpensive magnets on my doors of my car. So wherever my car is sitting, in the bank parking lot, at McDonald's, wherever, people, my car is a billboard moving around town.
I've heard so many great things about business that comes in, unusual connections that lead to more things too.
Yes.
Which again is the real power of this business, guys, is to think bigger. It's not just about the transaction. It's who you might meet and where you might go with this. Patricia says, what are the best tracking apps for your business? Not sure exactly what's meant by tracking. I'm thinking maybe for maybe mileage tracking or invoicing and bookkeeping.
Mileage IQ is great.
Yeah,
if you only have 40 trips a month or less, it's free. Then you can pay. I think it's $5.99 a month if you want unlimited.
Yes, I'm a big fan of them as well. As far as bookkeeping, let's throw a few out there. What are some of the favorites? I think we have Notary Assist, Notary Gadget for sure.
Those are the two probably most popular ones out there,
mm-hmm.
and they both do a great job. Although my personal favorite is Notary Assist. I just feel like it's designed by Notary. She really hits my sweet spot for what I need.
Excellent. Great. Thank you, guys. From Nick, I'm a new California notary. My live and online training classes did not make any mention about cases of identifying gender neutral and transgendered individuals. What best practice tips can you provide for handling and IDing and paperwork for them? Laura, you want to kick us off on that one? What's your experience on that?
I've had a couple, and one I just personally knew. The other one was a stranger. If whatever the ID says, and now they have IDs that don't say, that's what I'm going to go with. If they have paperwork that indicates a gender, then I'm going to look at the ID to see if there's an issue. And I'm going to say, okay, I need some assistance to help resolve the disparity between the ID and who you are in front of me right now. So let's have a conversation. I mean, there's nothing wrong with just asking the question to help me help them get it taken care of. The one I knew was already presenting herself in female, although the ID still had male on it because she had not quite gotten down to the DMV to change that. And now I knew her, so I didn't really have an issue. But when it's a stranger, then that would have presented a little bit more for me, and I would have said, you know what, I just need to talk through this with you so we can figure out how do we get your document accepted and how do I identify you, to support that. You can't just have a cut and dried, if it says this, do this, if it says that, do that. I think every case is going to be specific, and you need to work with that signer.
Excellent. Stephanie says, there are a couple issues I've been experiencing. It seems there aren't too many people in my area that are familiar with a mobile notary. They always seem to be hesitant once I've explained the service to them, which I can understand. So I usually get the, okay, I'll call you back, and hang up right away. Needless to say, though, they never call back. So, and this one that happens to be in Northeast Pennsylvania. I don't know if that gives you any context, but I also know that this isn't just in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of people that don't know that mobile notaries exist.
In California, too. I mean, it's everywhere that they're not familiar with the service. And I think one of the things that I do up front is I screen what their need is. And I ask, do you need to come into an office of a notary? You have a way to get there? Or are you needing me to come to your location? And if they're not familiar with the second option, they'll say, you mean you come to my location? And now I have an opportunity to talk about how I can assist them without them having to, go into an office, stand in line, whatever. And I do get quite a few calls from people that didn't realize that I could go to their location. So it's always an opportunity for me to help educate them on the spot.
Yeah. You know what? This is actually kind of almost a two-part question, because she also says the second issue is other potential clients, they just don't want to pay the travel fee.
Then they're not your client.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they don't need that service, that's the service you're selling, is that convenience to go to them. And if they don't need that convenience, you know what I do? I say, hey, there's an office. It's at 1320 Stanford Avenue. It's called My Mailbox. She's there till 6 o'clock. You don't need an appointment. Tell Cheryl I said hi. And I refer people out to the shipping centers. And you know what the opportunity is there? The shipping centers refer back to me, the mobile appointments, because they can't close their store. So now I have relationships with people that send me work. So it comes back and forth, number one. Number two, I help the client get the service they needed. Nothing wrong with that. Because next time they might need mobile service.
That's exactly right. Just being a resource really keeps you on their radar. The other thing is, and there's so much, kind of behind the scenes that might be happening too. It's the the way the conversation's flowing, how it's being presented, all of that's going to play a role. And my big thing is I'm not big into sales calls. So I'm always saying, stop selling, don't call and sell. This is a relationship business. So there might be ways to more authentically connect with people that is not so quote unquote salesy. It might be more relationship. I see Melissa posted in there too. Maybe follow up with a card, maybe start out with a card, that just says, hey, heard you were here, or heard you doing this, or whatever it might be. I'm big into doing some research on the front end, so it warms up the connection rather than just cold calling a bunch of people saying the same thing, scripted over and over again. It comes across real salesy and inauthentic, and people do not respond to it. In fact, we had Sandra Long from LinkedIn for Personal Branding. She quoted the percentage at 91% of people who receive cold calls never buy based on a cold call. It's just ineffective. If you're going to spend your time marketing, get warmer, go with the relationship component, put a little time on the front end, and it pays off in the back end.
Right. Bill, what I was reading from Stephanie's question was she's receiving calls. Did I read it wrong? That she's on the receiving end of the calls?
Or she's
trying to present it?
Yes. The first one is she's presenting what the opportunity is. The second one is that even when it looks like G&W, they don't want to pay a travel fee.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Stephanie says, I'm receiving the calls. So I would tell you that probably a third of the calls I get are not for mobile service. They think I'm sitting in an office somewhere, even though the name of my business is At Your Service Mobile Notary. In the phone book, it's under Mobile Notary. I mean, everything says mobile. And they still call and say, I want to come to your office. Where is it? So sometimes the public is just, they're a little blind. They're not paying attention to where they're calling. So you can help them. That is an opportunity to help them get to the right place.
Yep, absolutely. And also, if we were only talking about 2 or 3 calls, that's not enough data. When you start getting to hundreds or thousands of calls and you start seeing a trend in the information, then that's data that you can start making some decisions on. But just the first few calls, it may not be enough to adjust or change anything either. So wait for some more information. But one of the fact that 80% of people don't even know that we do what we do is a great opportunity, but it's also a huge challenge. It's an obstacle. We have to we have to tie that educational piece and the relationship piece into this, because a lot of times when people don't know we exist and then they hear about us right there on the phone, their brain goes right to price. Well, how much is it? Right. And if all you do is throw numbers at them, then you're playing the numbers game with them, and they're like, no, I'm not interested in that. But if you take a little time to probe and ask some questions and build some rapport, that's the foundations for the relationship. And then when you've proven that you know what you're doing and that you want to be of service and you're empathizing with their situation, whatever it might be, then the price becomes less important whenever you quote that towards the end of the call. Guys, I think oh my gosh, we're 10 minutes past, guys. Sorry about that. Carol, thank you so much for joining us. Laura, thank you for joining us and giving us a presentation on witnessing. And guys who are watching, thank you so much for growing yourself and your business on a Tuesday morning. You guys enjoy the rest of your week.
Bye-bye.